Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brad Miller, and this is the Chronically Human podcast, where we have discussions aimed at creating a world with more individual freedom and less unnecessary suffering. Today, my guest is a good friend, Keith Egan, a personal trainer from Ireland, and we discuss his battles with type 1 diabetes and how that didn't stop him from pursuing his dreams of coming to America, becoming a collegiate athlete, and now becoming a trainer that helps other people reach their fitness goals. We had a great time talking about also the mental mindset and what it takes to keep pushing through those obstacles that life throws at us all. I had a great time talking with Keith, and I learned a lot, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. Thank you, Keith Egan, coming and being on the show from all the way over in Kildare, Ireland. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, man. Yeah, I wanted to have you on the show because I think we share some similarities with early childhood illness, and not letting that stop us from pursuing what we want to do in life. And specifically for you, is your journey to America that you didn't allow, with your type 1 diabetes diagnosed at an early age, that you didn't allow that to stop you from pursuing your dream of coming to America, playing college golf. And how did you decide to come to America, and what did you think about America before and after when you did get here?
Okay, so I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 9 years old, and I didn't know. No one in my family knew if we had a history of it. I think the person who gave it to me was my great great uncle or something. So it was way far back in my family. And when I was starting to play sports seriously when I was about 12 years old. I had just started playing golf. I was playing soccer. It was kind of my first love. Um, the first maybe 3 or 4 years when I got diabetes, it was very tough for me and my parents. My parents didn't have any idea. I think for the first year I was going to the hospital maybe once a month just to try figure out what the hell was going on, how to gain control. And now at such a young age, and then especially back then, like we're talking about 16 years ago, we had no idea about dieting or proper nutrition, how to deal with diabetes on a day-to-day basis, and then not only dealing with diabetes, uh, dealing with it while you're playing sports as well, and very active at a young age. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think from about when I was 12, 13 years old, I had an obsession about moving over to America, playing sports. I wanted a scholarship, go to university. I think like when I was maybe 8 or 9, just before I got diagnosed with diabetes, me and my family, my brother, my big brother, my parents used to go over to Florida quite regularly, and I loved it. I loved the heat. I loved the people. It seemed like just everything. Once even you get off the plane, there was just a sense of freedom about the air. The diversity was just incredible. Um, so when I was 12, 13, I just had an obsession, and I kind of just worked my way. I always had it in my mind that I wanted to go to university in the US. And then when I was 17, roughly around 16, 17, I I kind of just really started to try push the envelope about coming over, looking about doing my SATs, trying to get in contact with different universities, different agencies about moving over to the US. And now I was so lucky I had great parents that they were all on board. They didn't question me about going to study whatever in university in Ireland. They were like, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. That's what you're going to do. So, um, I no, I worked relatively hard in school, but I could have done a million times better. But I didn't see that as my main priority at the time. I just wanted to get over to the US, so I was playing sports as serious as I could. And then when I turned 18 and I finished school in Ireland, secondary school or high school as you would call it, my parents were so generous. They gave me some money to go over to the US. I went over to Port St. Lucie in Florida. So now that's a funny story because I didn't know anyone in Port St. Lucie, Florida. My whole reason for going over was that I was trying to sort out going to university, trying to get in contact with somewhere where I could go and play, especially somewhere in the southeast, so where the weather would be nice. I would actually be able to play, practice, enjoy it, and eventually, hopefully, maybe turn professional if everything went well in college. So I knew a guy who knew a guy. So I knew of an Irish guy who owned a golf course in Port St. Lucie in Florida. For anyone who doesn't know, Port St. Lucie is a couple hours from between Orlando and Miami. So it was a really cool area. But so I flew over, I think it was January 3rd, 2012. I flew over. Now I was 18 years old, just had some money that my parents lent me. I was going over there for 90 days, which was the limit what you could stay over there at the time. I was going over without knowing a single person in America.
Wow,
The only person I knew was my brother, who was like 3 hour flight north in Boston. So didn't know a single person, and honestly, I I couldn't give a shit at the time. I was just obsessed with this opportunity that I had. A lot of people, especially in Ireland, um, we Irish people seem to travel well, but especially when you're that age, there's America is a very intimidating place because of the sense of diversity. There's no real set culture. It's very much a melting pot, so it's very intimidating for a lot of people. But I was obsessed with going, and I was so excited about the opportunity. So I didn't care. It was only when I was on the flight going over, I was like, what the hell am I doing? So I go over once I land over in Florida. Um, there was a limo that came and picked me up with a guy with a sign saying Egan on it. I was like, all right, this is legit. Turns out the guy that was helping me out, he owned the limo um, service company as well. So the limo picked me up and was dropping me to my accommodation. And I was talking to the guy, the Irish guy that was helping me out on the phone. And he was like, yeah, you're going to stay with this old guy. His name is Jimmy Jesus. He's going to help you out, like stay for a couple of months while you're here. I was like, okay, cool. I was just buzzing just because I arrived late at night. I was just buzzing about being over in America. Like just the adrenaline rush had kicked in and everything. And then I was thinking on the 30-minute drive there, I was like, why the hell is this guy's name Jimmy Jesus? Like, who the hell has a second name and their name is Jesus? So I didn't think much of it anyway. So when I got to this guy's house, he was about 68 years old, and he was so nice, so kind, so welcoming, so generous. He was like, if you need anything, just let me know. Very charismatic, very bubbly character. So I went to bed that night, still buzzing, so excited. So I wake up early about 7 a.m. the next morning, and I walk out into the living room, and there's Jimmy, ass naked in the living room, just walking around drinking coffee. As soon as I saw it, I was like, Jesus, Jimmy! And then I realized, I was like, well, that's why they call him Jimmy Jesus, because he was such a character and really didn't give a shit about anything. And then that was my welcoming to the US. After that, I kind of knew what to expect, and I had a blast with that guy for the couple months that I stayed there. He was so generous, helped me out so much. So I stayed in Florida for the 90 days. I was playing golf and practicing at that golf course, and then I was working as a cart guy, just helping out the golf course, just so just to show my support for how they helped me out. So eventually my main objective while I was there was to try sort out going to university, see what opportunities that I could gather, and then see where I went from there. Now I had the most amazing time while I was there because I met some incredible people, very generous. But I ended up going to meet a golf coach in a place called it was Harbour Ridge Golf Club. And the golf coach told me when I went to see him, he said halfway through the lesson, he was like, look, man, the sky's the limit for you. If you need to go to university over here, I'll help you out. I've got a lot of contacts. So I was like, look, man, geez, that's exactly what I was looking for. And it kind of came at a time that I didn't expect it. So he put me in contact with the coach at Clayton State University up in Atlanta, and I was in contact with him, and he was it was Steve Runke at the time, and he asked me to send on sports CV and video of my golf swing and everything, and he was very interested. So he was like, "I'd like you to come as a recruit." I was like, "Great." I didn't even know any geography about the US at the time. I was like, "Where the hell is Atlanta?" So he was like, "Look, you have a choice. You can either we'll fly you up and you can stay at a hotel, or else you can drive up and you have the freedom of going around the city while you're here." Because I was going to go play a golf tournament, stay there for a week. So I was like, I had moved to a Brazilian guy's house. I was renting a room and a car in the meantime, and so I had a car over there, and I was like, you know what, screw it, I'll drive up. At least that gives me more freedom. So I drove. It took me like, because I got lost. I didn't have a GPS or anything. I literally printed off directions on Google Maps, so I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It took me like 13 hours to get up to Atlanta.
Wow.
And I stayed there for a week, played a golf tournament. I started off terribly in the golf tournament, ended up losing in a playoff. So the golf coach Steve was very impressed, offered me a golf scholarship there and then. And then, so I get back to the hotel, and I was very happy that he offered me a scholarship. I was buzzing, like I was happy as anything. I was like, all these years since I was 12 years old, since I first picked up a golf club, my dream has kind of come true. One of my dreams that I've wanted to achieve, I can kind of tick it off now. There's only a couple of things I need to do. I need to go take the SATs, pass those, and then come back over in August. Now, while I was doing all this, Steve Runge calls me and he said, "Look, we saw that on your sports CV you have a lot of experience playing soccer at a relatively high level." I was over in Sunderland, like on a trial briefly, and so they were like, "We want you to come and try out for the soccer team." I was like, "Man, I don't know if I'd be interested." He's like, "Look, it could be more money for you. It could help out your scholarship." I was like, "Screw it, definitely, I'll do that." So I go and I try out for the soccer team, and I hadn't played soccer in about 8 months to a year, so I didn't have any idea how fit I was. So I go and I play. I had to borrow a pair of cleats from someone. I go and I play, and I played well, and I probably scored the best goal that I've ever scored in my life in this tryout. Even when I hit it, I hit a shot and it went perfect top corner, as good as you could strike a soccer ball. And then in my head, I was like, "Holy shit, that was just that was one of the best things I've ever done." But I just played it off like nothing happened. And the coach just called me over straight away, and he was like, "Geez, imagine what you could do if you were fit." So offered me a scholarship there and then. So now I plan on going over, hopefully to get some sort of scholarship, so I could go over and go to university over there. It turns out I ended up getting a double scholarship that helped me, that gave me a great opportunity and took a lot less pressure, or a lot more pressure off my parents. So I eventually went home to Ireland after the few months, took my SATs, grinded for the few months to do my SATs, because I was by no means an intellect in school or a good academic student, so I had to really work hard for that. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do actually, because it was a completely different system. We don't do multiple choice in Ireland in school. Yeah, everything is more like essay questions or essay answers, where you give more descriptive answers. So even doing multiple choice was very difficult for me. So that was a very tough process. But then eventually when I got home, took care of that whole process. I had the chance of moving back over to the US in August, where I was playing two sports. Now the difficult thing, this is where my diabetes and how I took care of that really, this is where I probably learned my most valuable lesson in terms of my body, because I wasn't aware of how serious and how intense training was in soccer in university over in the States. I thought, and it's a very common thing in Europe and especially Ireland or England. No one really views the US of having a very high standard in soccer,
Right.
which is ridiculous because especially now we're so lucky with the internet and social media and a lot of documentaries on Netflix, how intense and how little they mess around in college over in the US. You know well, Brad, like you're from the South. University sports is just everything.
It's huge,
It's
yeah.
it's incredible. So when I got over there, I had to go over in I think mid-July, and then that's when I got the experience of the hot Atlanta weather, and it was just something that was just insane.
The humidity and the
Coming
heat,
from,
yeah,
like
it's tough.
coming from like 15 degrees Celsius, which is like in the 60s, high 60s at best in Ireland in July, to like 100 plus degrees Fahrenheit and 35 degrees Celsius in Atlanta. So we had to, for the first 3 weeks I was there, we were doing 3 training sessions a day, for pre-season for soccer. Now, so each training session was about 2 hours long. Now so with my diabetes, I'm on an insulin pump. So what that means is that I have a machine that's basically like a manual pancreas, where I have a certain amount of insulin going into me per hour, and then any carbohydrates or any sugars that I eat, I would have to know the amount of grams of carbohydrates that I eat. So then I would for example, just say I'm eating 10 grams of carbohydrates, just say a banana, a medium-sized banana, I would give myself 1 unit of insulin. So that's kind of the way it works. And then obviously, whatever more carbohydrates you eat, the more you give yourself. But so the most I could have my insulin pump off for is roughly around an hour, give or take maybe 10 minutes before you start feeling any side effects. So training sessions were 2 hours long. So that meant I wasn't aware of this. Because any training session that I used to do was around an hour to 75 minutes, so I could kind of get away with it. But I had to take a shot of Levemir, which is like about 2 hours before practice, which is a slow releasing um, type of insulin.
Hmm.
So you have insulin usually in, like, I take Novo Rapid, it's called, in my insulin pump. So you have a mix of insulin and Act Rapid. Insulin is like a slower, more consistent acting type that would help your basal blood sugars. And then you have Act Rapid, which is a more fasting acting type that would look after like your carbohydrates and when you eat food and stuff. But I had to wake up. So when we had this pre-season, I had training at like 6 a.m., 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and then 6 p.m. So for the 6 a.m. training sessions, I would have to wake up about 3 hours beforehand, take a shot of Levemir, and then go home, do whatever, then take a shot 3 hours before the next training session, and then the same before the next training session. So it was, to absolute least, a nightmare for the first couple months, because I was trying to not only settle in. I didn't know anyone over there.
Right.
Didn't know a single person. The only person I knew was the golf coach, and I had met him for a week. Luckily, the people over there were amazing. But this process I was going through, I was training 3 times a day for the first 3 weeks, and then it was twice a day after that for about a month, and then it went to every day, once a day, every day after that. So I was trying to fit in golf practice, which is very time consuming, and then trying to study and get used to the college system over there as well. And not only that, trying to get my organize what the hell I'm doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of like my living facilities, like, because I didn't even have a pillow when I when I first got over there. All I had was a suitcase, and that was it. So that was a nightmare. But that was those 4 or 5 months. That first semester was probably the most I've ever learned throughout the course of my life, because the struggles of going through my diabetes, I learned with dieting. I learned how my body reacted to certain foods because when I got over there, I was I was so active, and in that heat, I was so susceptible to going into hypoglycemia,
Mm.
which is when your blood sugars drop to a dangerously low level, where you can go into a diabetic coma. I was so susceptible to for that to happen to me that I just had to basically just eat what I could, and I didn't have the luxury of eating what I wanted or what was most beneficial for my body because I was relying on a ride from a friend or someone to drive me to a shopping store or something like that. So I didn't have the luxury of any of that. So I was eating like IHOP. I was eating like Waffle House. Something that stuff that my body had never tasted before.
Right.
So my immune system was kind of broken. So my performance levels weren't as good playing soccer, but I was basically just trying to survive in that stage. And I didn't. In the university now they were very helpful uh, for my situation, but no one knew how to deal with that in terms of how to deal with diabetes in a consistent or in a high active environment like that. So it was very much something that I had to learn through trial and error. And I was so lucky. I was actually very lucky that I was where I was because Atlanta, I wasn't too sure about the city when I first moved there because it was, again, I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I learned to absolutely love the city because, first of all, the people were so generous. I had the opportunity of meeting so many great people inside the university and outside. Um, Now, in Ireland, we have a very, we kind of have a very not closed-minded view on things, but we're very much a close community. As in, we have very much one type of culture.
Hmm.
So, so yeah, I could go over to any place in Ireland, and I would fit in no problem. Whereas in America or in the US, you know, you have everything in one. It's like, you could go to Arizona is complete like a different world to New York or to Florida. Florida's like a different planet by
It
itself.
is
So
definitely.
I very much viewed America about or the US about being a complete open book, and everyone was so open minded, and that's what I loved about Atlanta. I had the opportunity of learning about different cultures, especially because of the airport there. It's so diverse. Um, but everyone was so generous. I had no problem, no issues with people trying to help me out, and that really helped me find my feet. So after a year or two of being there, I felt like home. I had a lot of close friends that really showed me a lot of what America or what the US their real culture was about. And that was something I learned. I was lucky to bump into you and your brother Joel, who showed me a lot.
We're glad
But
to glad to find you as well, Keith, man. You know, you
yeah,
come across the world and you find somebody you have so much in common with, and you it's weird how it's like you've known people before. You know what I mean? But even though
it's
you first meet them, and it's a
exactly
strange thing. But you know, I think we felt that way with you. We feel like you're part of the family.
100%, and that's what I think I feel like it's something that really comes natural to people that when someone is from a different culture, or just say I live in Ireland, someone that lives in Egypt, somewhere that's completely different in terms of culture, we think that people have a different mentality and completely different ideology and things like that. But I learned from being in an environment like when I was on the soccer team in Clayton State University. I think we had 20 or we had 30 players and something like 24 different nationalities,
Wow.
and we would be sitting in the dressing room and raising hell, having fun. You know, like you would never think of race, you would never think of culture, you'd never think of anything. But it was fun to learn that everyone was the exact same once they got in that same environment, but just with different cultures and different backgrounds, different upbringings.
Right.
And that was so fun because I got to learn about, from playing golf on the golf team there. I got to learn about real Mexican authentic food, real Mexican culture, real like Korean culture, like a lot of things that I didn't know, and I got to share my knowledge about the Irish culture, and it was the coolest thing ever. But then you have all these like very different cultures, but the exact same people. Once we went out to a bar, or once we had we were sitting down having a conversation, we had very similar things in common, very similar ideas when it came to being successful or having a good time or whatever. It was very cool, and it made me mellow out a lot, and much more. It was much more comforting for me to learn that once I moved over there, because I feel like until you expose yourself to that type of environment, what you have a lot of places in the US where you have different cultures, it's very hard to open your mind so much where you can really have a very clear perspective on different cultures. So I loved it. I absolutely loved it over there. Um my whole view on America since I moved back to Ireland is it's just that the whole idea of the land of opportunity is real as anything, because it's whatever your opportunity is, whatever you make of it. The people are incredible. I think there's too much sensitivity going on in the world because of all the social media and internet now. The people in the US, it's because you have so many people. First of all, there's like 300 or 350 million people.
There's a lot.
Um, there's a lot. So when you get a lot of people, like so many people like that, you're gonna get a lot of dickheads as well, and that's
Yeah,
just the way it
exactly.
is. And
Yeah,
usually,
probably at least 1%.
yeah, at least. And if you have, yeah, yeah, think of how many people is that, and usually the dickheads are more outspoken. So
They're very loud.
now they have a platform to do it. But I think the from the amount of people that I met over in the States, the amount of people that helped me out was just incredible. Um, my view is that the American culture is one of the most generous cultures I've ever come across, and the people are just amazing. So I had a very similar experience of the times I went to Boston to visit my brother. Random people that I would meet over there, and Boston isn't really known as a very it's a bit of a more aggressive culture than down south.
Right.
But people there were so welcoming, so generous. It was just undescribable. And the same down in Atlanta, the people were so generous. It was just amazing. So
Well, I think it's
yeah, it
too
was
how you
great.
approach people as well, and your attitude too, Keith. The people who think the world is against them, that everybody is out to get them. If you carry that around with you, then you're going to find that, in the world. But if you have an open mind and you see people as individuals, I think you get a lot farther in life when dealing with people.
I completely agree, and I'm a great believer. I believe in just being a great individual. I think if everyone is concentrates on themselves, how to be as good a person as they can be. Now that doesn't only mean like socially, it means just working as hard as you can be, or working as hard as you can, whatever you want to do in life, in terms of work and in terms of achievements, in terms of whether that's fitness goals, whether that's like creating a successful business. If you concentrate on being as good a person as you can be overall, everything else will kind of look after itself. Now, thing is, people aren't born into as good situations as others, and that's where it kind of gets a little bit messy. But people need to. I think we're very much getting too sensitive in terms of like our culture and politics and everything. I think people are losing perspective on what they need to do as an individual for everything to work properly. I
Yeah,
think we're
definitely.
getting way people are getting way too obsessed with how others are doing instead of just concentrating on themselves. The way I view myself, like I'm very much a more private person, but I'm very open. I'm very open and outgoing about things. So like I've no problem talking about my situation, whether it's health wise what I've done or what I plan on doing. But in terms of what I actually do on a day-to-day basis, I like to keep to myself and try to do as much and achieve as much as I can. Because I know a lot of people that, and you know yourself from social media, that it's people are they're showing the best side of themselves, and it doesn't really it doesn't, I don't know if that's how it should be done,
You have like two
or
opposites. You have people who act like everything they do is amazing, they have no problems in their life, and then you have the trolls out there who all they do is spew garbage. And so you don't have this
yeah,
a balanced view of how life is a struggle, but there's also good stuff in it too.
100%. And that's what so I've learned a lot of things in the past 6 months to a year. So yeah, I think so for myself, and I've learned this through having great parents, great family, great close friends. Um, Appreciate everything that you have, and that means even appreciating the struggles, because the struggles are what's going to shape you, what's going to help you grow as a person. It's what's gonna what you, when you're going through a tough time or when you're going through a good time, it's usually the struggles what you look back on how you performed under pressure, whether it's financially or whether it's health wise, whether it's whatever, how you performed there and how you grew from that situation. Um, I learned from listening a lot to the likes of Wim Hof, the likes of David Goggins. So because of David Goggins, actually not even because of David Goggins, I've got into running a lot in the past 6 months or so.
Keith, you were talking about the importance of mindset and what it's needed to overcome not just what you've gone through with your health issues, but with everybody trying to reach their fitness goals. Where do you get your motivation, and who do you look towards to fuel your motivational tank when you need that?
Well, really, where I get my motivation is a few different things. Number one, it's well, I suppose it's a bit of maybe afraid of failure. Failure is definitely one thing that motivates me. Uh, Another thing is trying to achieve certain goals. So I'm a huge believer in setting goals every year, every few months, small goals, even on a day-to-day basis, trying to set as many goals as I can, because if I don't have any goals, I find it's very easy to get into a very a comfort seeking mentality. So you're always seeking comfort, whether that's in the gym, whether that's doing anything. Like if I was just talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago who was getting into powerlifting, and he was saying that if he didn't enter competitions or tournaments, we were talking about how when you go in and you're lifting weights or you're going running or anything, you always just seek your level of comfort to make yourself feel like you've achieved something, rather than pushing yourself on a day-to-day basis and getting the most out of yourself of what you can. The people that I look for motivation is, and again, this depends on what I'm doing. If I'm playing golf, obviously I'll look at the best. I'll look at the likes of Tiger Woods, who's just a freak in terms of mentality towards his sport, work ethic. Now, obviously, there's a freakish amount of talent with him, but it's the same with every sport. Work beats talent every day of the week. So people who are talented and who are at the top aren't there for no reason. They're there because they're the hardest working athletes on the planet. And then it's just people like the likes of David Goggins. I got really into uh, his book recently, and I think we spoke about this just like on the phone a little while ago when I started running recently. I think it was like September. I was playing golf with a friend of mine who owns a gym in Dublin, and he asked me to do a 10K race that was like 2 weeks later. And I just very passively, I was just like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Sign me up, I'll do it, no problem. And then the more I started thinking about it, I went home that night. I was like, holy shit, I haven't run a 10K in years. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. And because I'm so competitive, I set out a plan, I set out a goal. I was like, look, right, not only am I going to run 10K, I need to beat them. I need to beat the guys I'm competing with, because they had run marathons, so they were regular runners. So I was like, I need to beat them. I need to do something good here. So I need to get in the gym and train and do as much as I can. So I bought David Goggins' book as an audio. started listening to it, I would first of all I started trying to do, because I couldn't run more than 10, 15 minutes on a treadmill at the time without dying of exhaustion. And it was just because I wasn't conditioned. I was relatively fit. I just hadn't been running at the time.
It's a different
So I
kind of
started,
fitness, running is.
and it was just mentally that was hard. So I was running, and at the time the weather in Ireland wasn't great, so it was hard running outside in rain. And I would be like, I was in the gym teaching clients in the morning, and I had I was on shift in the afternoon, so I didn't have a lot of time to go running outside, so I would be stuck on a treadmill. And I found it was just mentally was just grueling. So listening to David Goggins made me realize that just you just really need to suck it up and just go, just do it, and enjoy the struggle, enjoy the pain. And it was, again, so the way I worked it out was, I was like, if I can do 5 kilometers on a treadmill every day for a week, I'll slowly up it by a kilometer each day the second week, and then give myself a couple of days break, and then I'll try a couple times running outside before I eventually do a 10k. Now, I did the 10k. I did it in what I thought was a decent time for me. It was like 47 minutes or something. And but I arrived up to the 10k without headphones or anything, and because I
Nice.
thought it was like a social event, I'd never done one before. So I was stuck with my thoughts, with everything, and
And that's the real
I
challenge.
that's the real challenge. And you hear a lot of people talking about headphones are you're cheating and all this. And 100%, like, everyone knows when they train or when they work out, if they hear a song, it can really push you that extra mile or that extra few reps. So and I was reading that apparently when you feel like you're at exhaustion or you're at failure, your body has only reached 66% of its limit or something. So,
Wow.
I found that that was a huge test for me, because I think when I started the 10k, I started off fast, and then
Right.
so it got to a certain stage where my back was killing me. So I
Was it
looked at
your
my
ribs?
watch.
Was it under your ribs or?
It was just, well, I was doing like powerlifting that morning
That,
in
that
the
sounds like a
gym.
good idea.
No, it wasn't at all. But I looked at my watch, and it said I had only run 2.1 kilometers.
Oh man.
And I was like, okay, so I just need to sack it up, figure it out, and just go, just keep going, just one step at a time. And I was thinking, and this is through a little bit of training, this is what had helped me, and listen to David Goggins, people like that, made my mind conditioned more than anything. And I was like, okay, if I just wait until my knee starts hurting, then it'll take a little bit of tension off my back. And then once my knee starts hurting, wait till my ankle starts hurting. And then by the time, so I looked at my watch, and my phone had tracked like how fast each kilometer was. And it turns out my last kilometer that I ran, the 10th kilometer, was the fastest one I ran.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was just like, and that made me realize. So once I went home that night, I signed up for a couple more 10Ks, and it became a lot easier. And now I've got to the stage where I can run 15, 16 kilometers at ease, like no problem. And it was people through David Goggins who taught me that not only through running, but through any sort of training, you really just have to push yourself and enjoy that struggle, and really test yourself to things that you're not comfortable with, because it's the same. Like, you see anyone in the gym, usually like people who are huge and jacked, they're mainly doing bodybuilding exercise or type of routine. Whereas we need to kind of push ourselves to do things that we're not comfortable with, so we're as dynamic and as functional as possible. Because I
Is
think that's what other people lack nowadays.
is
They're
that what you
very
focus on with your clients? Is it functional strength? Is that what people
so
are moving towards
yeah.
nowadays?
So I started my own company, Type One Fitness, and I work under uh, a gym, FlyFit, in Dublin. So my company, I mainly focus on functional training for a lot of my clients. So people are moving pain free on a day to day basis, but trying to get as strong and as dynamic as they possibly can as well. And I work with a lot of beginners that are coming into the gym for the first time. So some people have a lot of focus on gaining muscle, losing fat,
Hmm.
and it's mainly making them realize, first of all, enjoying the process of going to the gym and working out and having a kind of a little bit of discipline in the gym, and then making them realize how important it is to be free on a day-to-day basis and not having any pains, because a lot of people, they just want to gain muscle, lose fat, so they start just pumping a lot of weights, and then they're constantly in pain. They don't know how to stretch, they don't know how to recover properly. So it's set out a program so that it can help them um, be like more dynamic than they ever have, like be more flexible than they ever have, and also be gaining muscle and gaining strength and look better than they ever have and feel better.
What about
Um,
obesity over there? Is it because in America, I bet you were surprised how girthy
yeah,
we are over here.
well, I again, America's a very strange spot because again, you have so many people over there. I think you're going to have 10 times the amount of fat people. But you see, the US is very, it's almost comes in small groups. Like you have a lot of fat people, really, really fat people, and then you have a lot of people who are just in phenomenal shape. Like probably the best athletes in the world are over there.
Right.
So you have those types of extremes, and because it's such a melting pot with all the different ethnicities, cultures, I think you're going to get that. Um, but I think because of the food over in the States, like the fast food situation, that's a result of like the culture of such a hard working culture. People, it's very normal that people work even 4 or 5 jobs. That's very normal over there. So people are under so much pressure. They don't have the luxury of going home and cooking after work. They have to go to another job, work all night, look after kids, get up, get a Chick-fil-A or something fast
Do you
food on the
miss
way to
Chick Fil
work.
A, by the way?
Who doesn't like Chick-fil-A? I mean, god damn it. But like, and when I was over there, I of course enjoyed the food. The food is amazing, and again, because you have when you go to cities like Atlanta, you have the luxury of having every type of food, like authentic Mexican food, authentic Korean food. You can get like the most amazing like Afghan food in the city of Boston, which is just you would never try that anywhere else. Um, but in terms of Ireland, I think Ireland is becoming one of the most obese countries in Europe,
Oh wow.
and I think it's because it's, I'm not exactly sure the specific reason, but I think well obviously beer and drink is probably a lot of it, but
A lot of carbs in
um,
that in
a
Guinness.
lot of herbs, and then after drinking on a night out, we like going and getting like kebabs, like Turkish food, or like a baguette, stuff like that.
What's that?
And a baguette is it's like a roll with like just say people would get like chicken, like breaded chicken or with like taco sauce and stuff
Oh,
like that on it. Man, it's delicious, but it's just not healthy. And
right.
then there would taco fries or something. So it's a lot of stuff like that that might make Ireland, and again the weather as well doesn't make it as appealing to go to the gym and be fit as the likes of Spain or Portugal, where they have really nice weather. But in terms of like the Irish diet, if you just took probably potatoes out of the Irish diet, it would probably be great because it's just usually the Irish diet is potato, meat, and some sort of vegetable.
Yeah, meat and
So
veg is really all you need. I think we've really gotten
yeah,
away from that.
yeah, and now I stick to kind of like a keto or paleo diet. One of the reasons is because for my diabetes. I realized through the years that carbohydrates and especially carbs such as like the likes of pasta or pizza or anything that's a slow releasing carbohydrate like that is just it's so hard for my body and most diabetics I've spoken to. It's so hard for our body to handle, and that our like my insulin pump just doesn't know how to deal with it because I can give myself a certain amount of insulin and it'll look after the amount of carbohydrates that are acting relatively fast. But then just say I go to bed, there will be still more carbohydrates releasing from that food overnight, and then I could wake up in the morning with a very high blood sugar, and then it'll take the whole day for that to come back to normal. Whereas I try just basically keep as little carbs in my diet as possible, and as organic as possible. So any type of carbs that I get are really from maybe sweet potato, any sort of fruits, and I would only really eat that if I'm maybe if I'm about to do any hard anaerobic training, or if I feel like I need it because my blood sugars might be a little bit on the lower side. But I feel like it's a lot easier to deal with, and I've actually enjoyed doing the paleo and keto diet because it makes me stay away from a lot of sugars, a lot of unnecessary carbs that I might eat, like even the likes of protein bars.
Oh man, they're ate
Um,
up with stuff in it. Yeah.
yeah, and they sound great, and they protein bars in Ireland especially now. There's a lot of companies that do just phenomenal bars that taste incredible, but they tear up. They seem to tear up your stomach, and I think you only realize that when you go away from them, and then you come
Right.
back and you try one that your stomach's it's all messed up. And
Well,
I
that's a
think
good point. You don't know how good you can feel. I believe in the paleo diet, but it's like being, a Jewish person, but not practicing. I'm not practicing paleo right now, but I truly believe in it. But I think
yeah,
that too is that you don't know how bad you feel and how much diet has a lot to do with that. And that I think a lot of folks get stuck in a rut. When I was working at a bank, I ate Chick-fil-A all the time and
yeah,
because it was convenient and I know how it kind of affect me. But when you stop eating that, you're like, holy crap, because
yeah.
I don't eat it like I used to, and then when I have it, I'm like, I don't think I ever felt good after eating that.
And we're probably the most adaptive species in the world, you know. So
Right.
and we're able to adapt so easily in terms of food, climate, anything. And it's the same when people go to the gym. They don't realize how good they feel until they're actually in a routine and they're doing it regularly. And then they're like, "Holy crap! I actually feel." Once they're in a structured diet or
Discipline.
training discipline, they realize how good they feel, and then they'll never go back to eating crap or being lazy. That's why you see some people who go from one extreme to the other, who are very lazy, and then they get a taste of how good it feels to be in good shape, or like having a disciplined diet.
Do you have
So
over there, do you guys do like New Year's resolutions and that sort of thing? It's huge in the States.
it's huge here. So people, I think the biggest thing is dry January. So
Oh,
people don't drink for January.
it's like sober
Yeah,
October, right?
it's like sober October, yeah. And that's why our like the gym is just for the first 2 weeks in January, especially, it's just insanely busy. People coming in, just like, oh, new year, new me, I want to do all this, blah blah blah. Which is no, it's great. I think it's people say it's all bullshit, but it's great. It gives people an excuse to be able to turn the page and have a whole new sheet of paper to just set goals and try new things. I think it's great, but it's a lot of the time it's just people don't stick to it. They're it's like a 2 week thing. Same way like people try to quit smoking or drinking or anything, and they don't stick to it. Um, but I think it gives people a chance. It's like gives them a second chance to do something that they always wanted to do.
Sure, I think it's a good thing too. And I read somewhere, I think it was Tony Robbins, he said that people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I think, folks, they try to do way too much and you get burned out, especially with fitness. You get overly sore and then you don't want to do it anymore if it hurts too much. Suffering's good, if it's voluntary suffering, but it's hard to find that point where you're not getting those diminishing returns.
100%, and I think you can see that in a number of different things. Well, now, since I know the process fairly well, is that if you go to the gym, you're better off doing a moderative to light workout probably 4 or 5 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having a very hard, vigorous workout 2 or 3 times a week. Just because your body it's not being absolutely pushed to the limit. You can have a nice amount of rest. The consistency is what's key, and I think you see that in a lot of businesses. A lot of people that work relatively hard and smart uh, do a lot better and achieve a lot more than people who in a short term try to work their ass off and achieve as much as they can. It seems to be a much better ingredient to success.
I agree. I get really excited about things, and then I'll start doing stuff, and then you hit the wall of what do I do next? And then you're tired and exhausted from doing all the new stuff that you've integrated into your life. And then that what next is something I think stops a lot of people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm the same. Like I seem to hit a wall and then don't let my mind open up and set out a process, like a step by step process. So yeah, it might be like a 10 step process and you can tick off each step, something like that. That would probably help. But that's for a lot of us. I think everyone's guilty of that in one way or another.
Yeah,
But
fitness
yeah,
is like that. I think the mental aspect of fitness is so crucial. I did a marathon years ago. It was a great book that I read. It's the Non-Marathon Runner's Guide to Running Your First Marathon, and it was a college course that they gave. And everybody who took the course, except like two people, these are people who never run in their life, and they all passed it. They all completed a marathon. And
wow,
yeah, I did my training after a major surgery where I about died, and 7 months later, I completed my first marathon. And,
wow,
with me, I had a direction and a goal, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. It was in the hospital I started training. I started walking around the ward. I would do one lap, then two, and then when I got home, I would do walk around the pool 1 or 2 laps. And over time, I built up to it. But in that training, it was so much mental. It was the idea that you have an internal locus of control, that it's internally what matters versus externally, that you can control your mindset. You can't control the infinite variabilities out there in the world.
that's an amazing story, and I think you're 100% right. I think once you have your mindset is in the right manner, is as strong as it can be, your body will probably adapt to that, and you'll probably your body will become stronger because of that as well. And I think there's a lot of people who are great. Speaking of like the process of doing something like a marathon that seems like unachievable. A lot of people who are like ultra marathon runners, they don't just go out and do one unless you're a freak like David Goggins. But people usually take a step by step process,
Mhm.
start off with like 10Ks, run half marathons, and then eventually do that. But a great guy is like Wim Hof, who does these breathing methods for state of recovery, and he talks about his story of being depressed, and he was like he found a way of breathing to help with his depression, and again he ended up coming up with this genius idea that helps a lot of people on a day-to-day basis in terms of recovery and increase in flexibility, gaining
Inflammation,
more
yeah.
control of their endocrine system,
Hmm.
whereas he was just using it as a process to get out of depression. And it turned into something hugely successful. So as long as you have a process, whether it's anything, whatever it is, you can really achieve way more than you actually think you can.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
that the Wim Hof stuff is great too. We've gone through that program a little bit. I
yeah,
get caught up. I've tried it twice, and I get caught up around the fourth or fifth week. I don't know if it's the physical side or if it's the cold showers. I got up to a 10-minute cold shower, at one time, and once you stop doing it for a while, jumping back in, it seems like insanity. But
yeah,
once you're in the
and
program, it makes so much sense.
and that's exactly what I think we've both been guilty of. Because I was the exact same. Once I got to week four, I really struggled with it just because it almost seems too easy, like too because it's just breathing, and we're like in the back of your mind you're like, this is just breathing. I've done this for my whole life. How much difference is this going to make? But if you look at anyone, like I was reading an article on Kobe Bryant. Someone was talking about when they were looking at Kobe Bryant training, he was doing the most. This is in his prime. He was doing the most basic exercises you could ever imagine. And a reporter or a journalist went up to him. He was like, "Kobe, like I've seen that exercise performed by kids in high school. How are you the best player on the planet?" And he was like, "Well, why do you think I am the best player on the planet? I perform the basics so efficiently and so good and consistently." And I think when I was doing that Wim Hof method, trying to do the 10-week program, it's just consistency. It's same what we were just talking about, trying to do it consistently for maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, and then eventually, without realizing, you'll find the benefits of it. And I started finding benefits straight away in terms of even my flexibility. I was trying to do that winter yoga. I would get up in the morning and do a little bit of it outside when it was about I don't know, in the 50s, 50s Fahrenheit, which is about 10 degrees Celsius, something like that, even less than that outside. So it was nice and brisk, but using his methods was really good to handle that. And then gaining control of whether it's my emotion in a pressure situation or just my mentality on a day-to-day basis. It seemed like it was working, but then again, I started taking it for granted, and then after a couple of weeks, I didn't. So that's where I feel like I need to take a maybe even a 10-step process where I tick off something that I achieved. I write out what my thoughts are on a weekly basis, where I feel like I'm learning from that process, because there's no doubt it's been proven that it's very beneficial.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely. He's helped so many people, especially with autoimmune issues. Like that's my
yeah,
deal. I've got autoimmune issues, and I think so many Americans do too. I don't know if it's 50%, but it's an insane number of the people who have autoimmune issues. And I think depression too is more of a physical process than people think it is. That there's an inflammatory issue that goes on in the brain, that triggers depression. I think in a lot of times. For folks, and there's different reasons why that happens. But I
well,
think,
that makes sense because I think the mind body connection is a
yep,
huge issue that people don't realize. Some people might be mentally happy and really struggling physically, and that creates a lot of frustration and sadness, and then they could slip into depression so easily as well.
yep.
Uh, that's where exercise is so important, even. And then people who are physically fit don't have the control of their mind like a lot of other people do. So it's getting that mind body connection, which is a lot of like what Wim Hof does. He gets that mind body connection. Yoga is a great thing. Meditation is a great thing. A great a great way of connecting those two and getting them.
How do you get your clients on board, like with the consistency and the discipline? Do you actually set out a plan with them, or do they tell you what their goals are, or do you do an assessment? How does that work? I've never
I,
used a personal trainer. How does that work?
So I would meet with them at the start. I would find out what their goals are, what their history is. So if they have a history of exercising or with a personal trainer or whatever, and then what their goals are, I'll get some people who are just like, look, I just want to get generally fit. I get some people who are like, all right, I want to run a half marathon. I'll get some people who are like, I want to improve my golf game. I want to improve my soccer game. So build a plan depending physically, build a plan depending on what their fitness goals are, and then I'll have a meeting with them and explain to them the process, what's required, how many times they need to come to the gym to find benefits, what they'll need to do diet wise. I'll speak to them diet wise. So a lot of people might be vegetarian, vegan, might have some issues health wise, so I'll set out a plan that way to help them gain long term. Some people might have a wedding that they want to get ready for.
Mm.
So a lot of groomsmen, a lot of brides to be come in, want to get ready for weddings. So the process might be a little bit shorter, a little bit more intense. Um, and then I'll explain to them like because a lot of people in the first week or two it's very hard, and some people might come in and they'll be talking about how they used to be very fit and they they're dying to get back to that stage, and then you just need to break it down into a week to week basis.
Hmm.
So whether it's by text, so they see it written down, or whether it's through email or whatever, explain how they are doing on a week to week basis and explain the process. Patience is very important, and then helping them enjoy it. So I explain my history and my experience that helps with a lot of people, friends of mine, their experience, and even some inspirational stories that might help people, because it's little things, very little things that might help people through a workout or through a couple of weeks. Because most people that come in for personal training are, that are coming in the evening to a busy gym in January when everyone's trying to get fit, and they're just not quite feeling it. Could have had an awful day at work again, because January is a busy time of the year. So people just aren't feeling it. So it's kind of just helping people realize what a good situation they're in. Like they're healthy, they've got a chance of being fit. So it's creating patience and then a sense of enjoyment for them.
And it's
And when
reminded people that they have control over a lot more than they think they do, as far as their
exact
their diet and their thoughts go. And once you start getting your diet right and your mind right, it seems like things in life start not become easier, but pushing through that wall to the next step. becomes more comfortable in a way.
Yeah, and it gives you more confidence as well. Once you feel like you're working hard, it gives you a lot of confidence. It's the same with anything. Usually, people are very confident in their job or in their particular craft. They're very confident because they have a lot of hours of hard work behind them. People, a lot of women or men who come into the gym will see other people in the gym who are yoked or who are just massive and who look like they're in incredible shape, and they look at those people as they're almost like a different type of human or a
Right.
different species.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's very achievable. Though those people are probably just have been consistent. A lot of people who are in very good shape, who are in the gym every day consistently, usually have their own type of story. Usually, when they were younger, they had some issues, or have experienced some type of adversity, that has caused them to be in that type of mentality and to push themselves as much as they can. And it's making people realize that. So I feel like everyone has a side to them that they can tap into that can push them a little bit more. And David Goggins talks about that, getting into your dark side. I got into that running because I hated it so much. I need to get into my dark side just to get through this 2 mile run. But I feel like it's 100% true, and I think you realize how strong you are when you push yourself to those limits. And I think that's where mixing up your training and getting yourself in an uncomfortable situation is so important, so you can actually get that sense of comfort in uncomfortable environments.
Yes, definitely.
So
You talked about, being comfortable, seeking, comfort. I think that's what humans, we do that on a daily basis, but the world
yes,
has changed so much from what our ancestors did because our DNA is really of, hunter gatherers of 200,000 years ago or even a million years ago, and that's what we're keyed in for. And the
yeah.
comforts in society are great, and I think they're good, but seeking voluntary suffering, I think, is so necessary in life.
I completely agree. Uh, Whether that's why I think a lot more people are getting into training now. They're realizing through how sensitive everything is getting with a lot of different things, social media. Uh, People are starting to find out, and how common depression is. Like, depression is such a big issue, whatever people's opinion is on it. It's getting so common that it's actually getting frightening. So people are realizing that they have to do something about it just to avoid it more than anything.
Just
So,
to keep living
um,
too, I mean, that's, I think, if people can't do anything, because I've been in the point where I've been laid up for months, sick, and sometimes all you can do is think about walking, and once you get a little bit stronger, thinking about doing 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, 15, and then before you know it, you're able to walk miles and even complete a marathon. What do you tell your clients about that, to not be so frustrated when they're not seeing results immediately?
I think it's a lot of it is about sticking to a process. So I'll when a lot of my clients will get frustrated about maybe not gaining strength fast enough. Some men that come in that have started off um might get them, like, if they're doing some sort of training, and they're seeking to increase their strength, and they don't feel like they're quite getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when I'll bring out the program that we have, the step-by-step process, and I'll be like, look, this is the progress that we've made over the last few weeks. Going by this, Going by the way we track this, you're actually on pace to make the sort of improvement that we've expected from the start.
Right.
So don't get so down on yourself. You need a bit of patience. If you look at it like, so, just say they're I don't know, shoulder pressing 20 kilos, which is about 42 pounds.
I appreciate you translating that for us
No, no,
Americans here.
no problems. I know you'll get a lot of different people. I've had the luxury of being in both environments, so I know. But yeah, some people like that, they'll look at it as in the present time. Like, I feel weak. I feel like I can't lift that. I'm like, well, look, from week one, you've improved lifting by about 10 kilos. So that's a huge increase in strength in such a short space of time. So be proud of yourself. That's why tracking your workouts, tracking your progress is so important, and having a step-by-step process. Because
That's
if you don't have a step-by-step process, it's hard to gain confidence from that as well.
Yeah, that's a
Sometimes, like
great
looking
point
at,
about
yeah,
tracking your progress because we get so caught up in the immediacy of the now, we forget who we were a year ago. You know, we
yeah,
we, we forget how far we've gone. And I think, being proud of yourself, people have denigrated that so much that you're not supposed to have pride, in yourself. And I think people have taken that way out of hand, that you should be proud of your accomplishments, that you should be proud of improvement in progress.
I 100% agree, and I'm a big believer in individuals. Like, I think you should be. You're living in your own body. You control your own world. You're stuck in that body for the guts of possibly 100 years. So you need to own it. You need to be as thoughtful and as kind to yourself as possible. If you're as happy as you can be, and you work as hard as you can, more than likely stats show that you're going to be relatively successful or have a good life.
Good things happen.
Um, Good things happen, exactly. So I believe in being as confident as possible. Give yourself all the props you can, but don't give it for no reason. Make yourself work hard. Make yourself go through struggle, and then you'll earn it. And then once you earn it, you know, fucking own it and be confident. Show your confidence, and then be happy in the meantime. Enjoy the whole process of struggle and achievements as well, because I don't think enough people do that. Some people aren't probably, some people probably aren't outspoken about their own achievements in terms of what they're genuinely proud of and happy about. They're more about a lot of people are more maybe outspoken about being confident because they're trying to make themselves feel good rather than just being genuinely proud of what they've done.
And
So
everybody
I
has
I'm a
something
big believer.
that they've struggled through and gone through. And I think a lot of times
Yeah,
we discount our struggles of being sick when you're younger, overcoming that. And sometimes it's just getting through the day. Some people have such a horrible set of cards dealt to them, that just getting through the
yeah,
day and being nice to other people is an enormous accomplishment. And I don't think that's appreciated enough. That I think Socrates said that you should be kind to everyone because everybody's carrying a heavy load, and
absolutely.
and not everybody's going to be The Rock. Not everybody's going to have Titan Games and be the biggest movie
And
star in the world.
you look at, like, even The Rock, he talks about the struggles that he had. He was depressed, and you would never, ever, ever think that. But he obviously has his way of dealing with it, and he realizes the adversity he went through. So he works his ass off. He almost seems like an alien. Like, he works so hard, it's insane. And he's an inspiration because you realize that he's not this uncommon person. Like, he goes through as much, if not more, struggles than anyone. That's why he is so successful. And you realize through all the struggles that you've been through health wise more than anything, which is the hardest type of struggle to go through, that you need to just keep going, keep trying, keep moving, keep doing whatever you can to be happy. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's the main thing we want in life, is to be happy. You see so many people who are so successful money wise, rich, and then just fucking go off the planet because they haven't found happiness. They've gone insane. I feel like it's doing whatever, and that's why I feel like people are doing a lot more, concentrating a lot more on dieting, exercise, the likes of meditation, this Wim Hof method, a lot of stuff like that that are really helping themselves achieve that.
And you can do it. Keep it simple. Do the basics. Be
Yeah,
consistent, disciplined, and give yourself some credit. You deserve it, right?
absolutely. And then it's being nice to people, because people,
That's
I feel like a lot of people carry the load on themselves too much. Like, if you're a lot nicer to yourself and you concentrate on making yourself happy, you'll be happy and give a better vibe, and carrying it towards other people, being nicer to other people, and then that vibe will gain momentum like a snowball effect, and then people will get on a lot better. I feel like people carry their own load, whether it's the depression they're going through, and they don't realize it. They haven't self-evaluated themselves enough to realize how they are to other people. And it's not, your own image doesn't matter to other people. It's how you feel about yourself. But if you make yourself feel as good as you can possibly feel, you'll be a lot nicer to other people as well without even noticing it.
I agree, and I think there is something about aura or energy or something like that that hasn't been totally measured yet. But when you're in a room and somebody is like an asshole, you can really tell immediately when they walk in the room. And when
I
somebody's cool and friendly and you click with them, you can sense that as well.
You know, when someone comes in the room, you're like, what the hell? You just say it's a friend, and they're a lot more bubbly than normal. You're like, what the hell happened? What happened to you? And then you know good news is coming, just
Right,
because you can feel it from them.
right.
And yeah, I think that, I know, I'm not sure if I believe a lot in a karma or the law of attraction. I know there's a certain amount of, I do believe in aura and energy, good and bad energy, and I think that's a huge part of it. Good vibes are such a big and powerful thing that I think we take for granted, and a lot
Exactly.
of people don't take that serious enough because, again, if you concentrate on your own sense of happiness, you'll probably realize a lot more. You'll get a lot more good luck than bad luck. You see, most people that get really good luck are like happy, jolly, positive people. And I don't know if that's I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's something to that, and sometimes life just shits all over you. But I think a lot of times, if people carry around the idea that the world is against them, then that's exactly what they're going to find.
Yeah, the world will probably act against them.
Yeah, definitely. That's right. Well, Keith, a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff, man. Where can people find you on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook? Where can folks find you to hook up
I'm on
social media?
I'm on Instagram on Keith Egan 17, Keith Egan 17 on Twitter, Keith Egan on Facebook, and then I'm gonna get my Type 1 Fitness Instagram started in the next week or so. So everyone can follow me on that, and I'm gonna get my website started very shortly. So thanks
Excellent,
very
man.
much. I really
Fan-
appreciate that.
Fantastic stuff. I really appreciate you being on. Hang around for just a second afterwards, but thanks for the great conversation, man, and I hope to have you on soon.
Will do, man. Pleasure.